Ryan's Office Revenge. They fired me at 53 via email after 20 years, and the subject line was worse than the body. Workforce optimization. Your role. Not, we need to talk. Not, thank you for your service. Just corporate speak for, you're done here, and we couldn't be bothered to do it in person. The message came through at 11:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was sitting at my kitchen table reviewing Emma's tuition bill for spring semester, $18,000 due in 6 weeks, when my phone buzzed. Email from HR. I almost ignored it. Nothing good ever comes from HR after hours. Dear Bradley, as part of our strategic realignment in preparation for the upcoming merger with Summit Capital, we are streamlining certain operational roles. After careful review, your position as Principal Software Architect has been identified for elimination, effective immediately. Your access to company systems will be deactivated at 5:00 p.m. tomorrow. Please coordinate with IT to return all company property. We appreciate your contributions and wish you success in your future endeavors. Regards, Human Resources. Apex Systems. My name is Brad Hoffman. I'm 53 years old, and until that moment I'd been the guy who kept Apex Systems running for 20 years. Not the flashy guy giving presentations or writing white papers. I was the one who made sure the lights stayed on when everything else was falling apart. I read the email 3 times before it sank in. 20 years. 4 CEOs, 15 platform migrations, countless 3 a.m. emergency calls when defense contractors couldn't access their data because some brilliant MBA decided to optimize the database structure. And they sent me a form letter signed Human Resources. Not even a name. I sat there staring at Emma's tuition bill. $18,000, plus the $3,200 monthly alimony payment to my ex-wife, Sandra, that was already 2 weeks late, plus rent, utilities, and the stack of credit card bills that had been growing since the divorce settlement last year. The lawyer fees alone had drained my savings. My severance package would last maybe 3 months if I ate nothing but ramen. Then my chest started tightening. Sharp pain radiating down my left arm. Not the first time since the divorce stress hit, but this one felt different, more urgent. I grabbed my keys and drove myself to the ER at 12:30 a.m., still wearing the old Army t-shirt I'd put on after dinner. Mr. Hoffman, you didn't have a heart attack, but your stress levels are dangerously high, Dr. Martinez said 4 hours later, looking at my EKG results. Your body is telling you something important. You need to make some serious changes. Changes. Right. Like finding a job at 53 in an industry that thinks anyone over 40 is obsolete and anyone over 50 is a fossil. The next morning I cleaned out my desk. 20 years of accumulated stuff fit in 2 cardboard boxes from the supply closet. Printed architecture diagrams from systems that were probably still running. A coffee mug someone gave me 5 years ago that said I turn coffee into code. Photos of Emma at various ages that I'd never bothered to take home. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody even looked up when I walked past their cubes wheeling my boxes on a dolly. These were people I'd trained, people whose code I'd reviewed, people I'd covered for when they made mistakes that could have cost the company major contracts. But they were all staring at their screens like I was already invisible. The security guard who walked me out was apologetic. Sorry about this, Mr. Hoffman. Always liked having you around. You actually knew how to fix things. Thanks, Jimmy. Take care of yourself. That was it. 20 years ended with a handshake from a security guard. For the next 5 weeks, I became a professional job applicant. Updated my LinkedIn profile, rewrote my resume 12 different ways, applied to everything from senior architect positions to junior developer roles at startups run by kids who weren't even born when I started coding. The rejection letters started coming in. Within days, thank you for your interest in our company. While your experience is impressive, we've decided to pursue candidates whose background more closely aligns with our current needs. Translation: You're too old. We're looking for someone earlier in their career who can grow with the company. Translation: You're too expensive. Unfortunately, we have concerns about long-term cultural fit. Translation: You're older than everyone here, including the CEO. The worst part wasn't the rejections. It was the interviews where some 28-year-old VP would look at my resume and say things like, "Wow, you've been doing this longer than I've been alive," like my experience was a disease instead of an asset. Or they'd ask if I was comfortable working with newer technologies, as if being 53 meant I'd forgotten how to learn. Emma called every few days from college, worried about spring semester. "Dad, are you okay? You sound stressed." "Just between jobs, sweetheart. Don't worry about tuition. I'll figure it out." But I was lying. The money was running out fast. Sandra's lawyer had already called twice about late alimony payments. The mortgage on my apartment was due in 6 days, and I was $4,800 short. The chest pains came back twice more, but I didn't go to the ER. Couldn't afford another $2,000 bill for them to tell me I was stressed. I knew I was stressed. Then, 5 weeks after the termination email, I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking black coffee and wondering if I should call the VA about disability benefits, when my phone rang. Unknown number, California area code. "Bradley Hoffman," I said. "Mr. Hoffman, this is Oliver Stone from Whitfield & Associates. We represent Apex Systems in corporate legal matters." A lawyer. That was definitely new. "What can I do for you, Mr. Stone?" "We're reaching out regarding a matter related to your prior employment. Specifically, we need to discuss patent number 9447-823. I set my coffee down so hard it splashed on Emma's tuition bill. Patent 9447-823. The adaptive encryption algorithm I'd written 7 years ago during a particularly stressful weekend when Apex's defense contracts were failing security audits left and right. The Pentagon was threatening to pull a $40 million contract because our data encryption wasn't meeting new cybersecurity standards. I'd spent that entire weekend in my home office, working on my personal laptop, developing an algorithm that could adapt encryption protocols in real time based on threat assessment patterns. Not because I loved the company, but because I was tired of getting emergency calls every time some defense contractor couldn't access their classified data. The algorithm was elegant. Instead of using static encryption keys that could be cracked with enough computing power, it analyzed incoming traffic patterns and dynamically adjusted encryption strength and methodology. It cut security vulnerabilities by 85% and made our platform virtually unhackable. I'd filed the patent under my own name because I was still technically a contractor then, transitioning from my Army service into full-time civilian work. My contractor agreement explicitly stated that any intellectual property created on personal equipment during non-billable hours remained the property of the contractor unless formally assigned in writing to the company. Nobody at Apex ever asked about it. They just implemented the algorithm, saved their Pentagon contracts, and moved on. I'd forgotten about it until that phone call. "What about the patent?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Stone's tone shifted, becoming more formal and careful. "We're in the final stages of due diligence for the Summit Capital acquisition. The technical review identified certain dependencies in Apex's core infrastructure that rely on intellectual property we don't currently own." I leaned back in my chair. "You're saying you can't complete the deal without my patent?" A pause. "We're saying there are complications that need to be resolved quickly. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss transfer of rights." I smiled for the first time in 5 weeks. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile you get when the people who threw you away like garbage suddenly realize they need something you have. "Then you'll need to deal with me," I said. Not your CEO, not your board. Me. Mr. Hoffman, I don't think you understand the urgency here, Stone continued. This is a $590 million transaction. Any delay could jeopardize the entire deal. We're prepared to offer fair market compensation for a quick resolution. I understand perfectly, I said, standing up and walking to my kitchen window. You fired me 5 weeks ago to clean up your balance sheet for this merger. You wanted to look lean and efficient for the buyers. Now you've discovered that the technology holding your entire defense platform together is owned by the guy you just tossed out. Silence on the line. I could almost hear him calculating how much trouble Apex was in. So here's how this works, I continued. You want to talk? Send me a formal proposal. Include compensation terms, licensing structure, and a list of everyone who will be in the room. And Mr. Stone? I'm not signing anything without my lawyer present, and I'm not doing this on your timeline. You need me more than I need you. I hung up and sat there for a minute, heart pounding, but not from stress this time, from the satisfaction of finally saying what I'd wanted to say for 5 weeks. Then I called the one person who'd seen this coming years ago. Howard Miller picked up on the third ring. Howard was 68, a grizzled Army veteran who'd worked at Apex back when it was a 12-person startup in a converted warehouse. He'd been my mentor when I transitioned from combat engineer to software architect after my service in Iraq. Howard understood both the military mindset and the corporate world's tendency to chew up veterans and spit them out. Brad, I was wondering. I was. When you'd call, he said. Heard about the layoffs through the grapevine. Figured they'd be stupid enough to cut you. Howard, remember 7 years ago when you told me to file patents on anything I built on my own time? He chuckled, a dry sound. The encryption algorithm? You actually listened to an old man's advice? I did, and now they can't sell the company without it. Good. Let them squirm. You need a lawyer? Yeah. Someone who specializes in corporate IP disputes. Call Victoria Barnes. She's at Barnes & Associates downtown. Former in-house counsel at 3 different defense contractors before she went solo. She's sharp, knows the industry, and doesn't take garbage from corporate bullies. Tell her I sent you. Howard gave me her number, then asked the question that mattered. Brad, what do you really want out of this? Money? Revenge? Justice? I thought about Emma's tuition bill still sitting on my kitchen table, about Sandra's lawyer threatening legal action over missed alimony, payments, about 20 years of loyalty rewarded with a form letter termination. I want them to understand that experience matters, I said, that you can't just throw people away when it's convenient. And Howard? I want my team protected. The junior engineers who are good at their jobs but don't have the connections or experience to fight back. That's going to complicate things, Howard said. But it's not impossible. Just remember what we learned in the Army. The enemy always reveals their true position when they're desperate. Victoria Barnes was everything Howard promised. Mid-50s, sharp gray suit, eyes that missed nothing. I met her at her office the next day. A corner suite in a downtown tower that screamed expensive, but not flashy. Walk me through everything, she said, after I'd explained the situation. Start with your original contractor agreement. I pulled out the paperwork I'd dug up the night before. Victoria read through it carefully, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. You own this patent outright? She asked. Yes. Apex never requested assignment, never paid me for it. Never even acknowledged it existed until their lawyers found it during due diligence. She smiled. Not a friendly smile. A predator's smile. Then they're in serious trouble. Without your patent, they can't sell their defense platform to Summit Capital. And without the platform, there's no $590 million deal. So what do? We wait. They'll come back with an offer. When they do, we'll counter, and we'll keep countering until they understand that you're not a problem to be solved cheaply. You're a partner they need. The formal offer came 3 days later, delivered by courier in a thick envelope with Whitfield and Associates letterhead. Very official, very expensive looking. $200,000 for full assignment of patent 9th 447,823. Victoria laughed when she read it. Actually laughed. This is insulting. They're offering you $200,000 for a patent that's enabling a $590 million deal. That's like offering someone $20 for a car. We drafted our counteroffer the same day. $4 million for exclusive licensing rights, plus 2% royalty on all products incorporating the patent, plus employment protection guarantees for Apex's engineering staff. They came back at $500,000 with no royalties and no employment protections. We countered at $3.5 million with retained licensing rights. Then they stalled for a week. That's when Simon Walsh called me directly. Simon was Apex's CEO, brought in 2 years ago from some consulting firm to professionalize operations and prepare for scale. He was the one who'd signed off on my termination. Mid-40s, MBA from somewhere expensive, the kind of guy who used phrases like synergistic optimization in casual conversation. "Brad," he said, voice warm and friendly like we were old buddies. "Hey, I know there's been some confusion about old paperwork. I wanted to reach out personally and clear the air. There's no confusion, Simon. I own the patent. You need it right. Absolutely, and I totally respect that intellectual property is important. Look, I'm prepared to make this right. $750,000 for full assignment. Clean break. Plus, I'll personally ensure you're brought back as a senior consultant for the transition. Full benefits, competitive day rate, $750,000 for a patent enabling a $590 million deal, plus the insult of offering me my old job back as a consultant." "Simon, this call is being recorded for documentation purposes," I said. Silence. "Do not contact me directly again. All communication goes through my attorney." "Brad, wait. Look, I understand you're upset about the layoffs, but this is business. We needed to optimize our cost structure for—" "The answer is no," I interrupted. "You fired me via email to make your numbers look good. You treated me like I was disposable. Now you get to learn what that decision actually cost you." I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the satisfaction of finally telling Simon exactly what I thought of him and his optimization. The retaliation started the next day. An email from Apex's IT department claiming I still had company property, specifically a laptop they'd written off 3 years ago but suddenly needed back for security compliance. Pure harassment. Then a letter from HR saying my possession of proprietary development materials violated my severance agreement. They were trying to paint me as some kind of corporate thief. Victoria shut it down immediately with cease and desist letters that made their lawyers back off, but Simon's nastiest move came through the team. Zach Williams called me that evening. Zach was one of the junior developers I'd hired and trained 3 years ago. Good kid, asked smart questions, actually read documentation before asking for help. "Brad, I need to tell you something," he said, voice tight with worry. "Simon held an all-hands meeting today. He said the Summit deal might fall through because of legal complications with legacy intellectual property. He said if it does, the whole engineering department gets laid off. 37 people, Brad, including the contractors." There it was. Simon was using my own people as hostages, making them think I was the villain holding up their future. "Zach, listen to me carefully," I said. "Simon is lying. The deal isn't falling apart because of me. It's falling apart because he tried to sell something he doesn't own. I know that. But people are scared. Some of them are saying you're being greedy, holding the company hostage over old paperwork." That hurt more than the termination email had. "Zach, I'm not the enemy here. Whatever happens with this deal, I'm going to make sure you guys are protected. That's a promise. Can you really do that? I'm going to try my hardest." After I hung up, I called Victoria. "They're using the engineering team as leverage," I told her, "making them think I'm the bad guy. Classic corporate tactic," she said. "Create a crisis, blame the victim. Pressure them into accepting a bad deal to save their former colleagues." What do? We hold the line. "Because, Brad, I've got news. Summit Capital just reached out to me directly. They want to meet." "Summit wants to meet directly?" I asked Victoria. "What does that mean?" "It means they're realizing they don't need Apex's management. They just need your patent and the people who know how to implement it." We met at Summit Capital's offices 3 days later. Glass tower in downtown LA, 42nd floor, conference room with a view of the mountains that probably cost more to lease than my annual salary. The table was some kind of imported wood that gleamed under the recessed lighting. Sitting across from us was Patricia Sullivan, Summit's general counsel, and Ryan Torres, their head of technical due diligence. Both looked like they'd done their homework. Simon Walsh wasn't there. That told me everything I needed to know. "Mr. Hoffman," Patricia began, sliding a folder across the table, "we've completed our technical review of Apex's platform. Your encryption algorithm isn't just important to their system, it's the foundation everything else is built on." I nodded. "I know. I designed it that way." "The question is," Ryan said, leaning forward, "what do you want to do about it?" Victoria had prepared me for this moment. "Don't seem eager. Let them make the first move. Show them you're a partner, not a vendor." "That depends on what you're proposing," I said. Patricia opened her folder. "We're prepared to make you an offer, but we want to be clear about what we're buying. We're not interested in a simple patent purchase. We want a licensing agreement with retained rights." She slid a document across the table. "Summit gets exclusive rights to use patent 9447-23 within the defense systems vertical. You retain ownership and can license it elsewhere for other applications." I glanced at Victoria. She gave me a slight nod. "What's the financial structure?" I asked. $3 million up front," Patricia said without hesitation, "plus 2% of gross revenue from any product incorporating the patent, capped at $12 million over 5 years. I did the math quietly. If their platform performed even moderately well, that was potentially $15.5 million total, more money than I'd see in 3 lifetimes of corporate salaries. "And the engineering team?" I asked. This was the part that mattered most to me. Ryan's expression shifted to something almost like respect. "We want to offer employment to Apex's entire engineering staff. Same roles, 15% salary increase across the board, full benefits, and vested equity in the new entity." "All of them?" "All of them. The junior developers, the systems administrators, the database specialists, even the QA testers. We've reviewed their work. They're good people doing solid engineering. The only dead weight is in management. What happens to Apex?" Patricia's expression didn't change. "We're restructuring the deal. Summit will acquire the customer contracts, infrastructure, and intellectual property through direct licensing agreements. Apex's corporate structure and executive team will not be part of the transaction." Translation: Simon and his MBA buddies were getting cut out completely. "The purchase price for Apex drops to $85 million, Ryan continued. "Basically, we're buying their customer list and office lease. Everything valuable, the technology and the people, comes through separate agreements. Simon's $590 million payday had just become an $85 million garage sale." "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "We want to offer you a position as Chief Technology Architect. You'd oversee the integration of your encryption technology across our entire defense portfolio. $185,000 base salary, full equity package, and you'd report directly to our CTO. I looked at Victoria. She was trying not to smile. I want employment guarantees in writing, I said. Salary increases, equity vesting schedules, severance protections, and I want to personally approve the final list of who gets offers from the engineering team. Agreed, Patricia said immediately. One more thing. I want a no retaliation clause. Summit commits to never hire or contract with anyone from Apex's current executive team for a period of 5 years. Ryan actually smiled at that. Done. We shook hands across that expensive table. The same hand that had been ignored for 5 weeks was now closing a deal worth potentially $15.5 million. The news broke 2 days later. Tech industry websites picked it up first, then the business journals. Summit Capital restructures Apex acquisition, bypasses executive team. Former Apex architect emerges as key IP holder in revised deal. CEO Simon Walsh. Out as 590 alone. Merger becomes 85 alone. Asset purchase. The headlines were brutal for Simon. According to the articles, Summit had conducted an enhanced technical review that revealed significant intellectual property gaps in Apex's claimed assets. The original merger agreement was terminated, replaced by a targeted asset acquisition focused on proven technology and engineering talent. Corporate speak for, "We don't want your managers, we want the people who actually build things." My phone started ringing immediately. Reporters wanting quotes about David beating Goliath. Headhunters suddenly very interested in my available status. Even a few former colleagues from other companies reaching out to congratulate me. But the call that mattered most came from Zach. "Brad, is it true? Summit offered jobs to the whole engineering team?" "It's true. 15% raises, better benefits, equity packages." "And Zach? No more 3 a.m. emergency calls because some VP decided to optimize the database without understanding how it works." I could hear the relief in his voice. "What about Simon?" "What about him?" "Word is he's been trying to reach you." Simon had indeed been trying to reach me. 3 voicemails in 2 days, each one more desperate than the last. The first one, professional. "Brad, we should talk about finding a mutually beneficial solution." The second was pleading. "Brad, please call me back. I think we can work something out that benefits everyone." The third was desperate. "Brad, I know things got heated, but I'm in a really tough spot here. The board is asking questions I can't answer. Maybe we can figure out some kind of consulting arrangement?" I listened to each one once, then deleted them. Victoria called me that evening. The employment offers went out today. 37 engineers, all accepted. They start Monday. And Simon? Simon's LinkedIn profile shows he's exploring new opportunities. Apex's board called an emergency meeting this afternoon. Word is they're looking for a scapegoat. I hung up and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in 5 weeks, my chest felt completely clear. No pain, no tightness, just the satisfaction of a job well done. Tomorrow, I'd start as Chief Technology Architect at Summit Defense Systems. Real salary, real equity, real respect for experience and expertise. But tonight, I allowed myself to enjoy the simple pleasure of Simon Walsh, discovering what it felt like to be disposable. The first licensing payment hit my account 10 days later. $3.5 million. I stared at the bank statement for a full minute before it felt real. I called Emma first. "Dad, are you serious?" she said after I explained everything. "You actually own the patent they need?" "I do. And sweetheart, you don't need to worry about tuition anymore. Spring semester, fall semester, graduate school if you want it. It's all covered." She was quiet for a moment. "Dad, you sound different. Happier." "I am, Emma. For the first time in months, I actually am." Next, I called Sandra's lawyer and paid off the remaining alimony balance in full. $38,000 transferred immediately. No more monthly stress, no more threatening letters. Done. Then I did something that surprised even me. I set up a fund with $500,000 to help engineers over 45 who get pushed out of the tech industry. Not charity. Practical support. Resume services, legal advice for age discrimination cases, bridge loans for people between jobs. The Brad Hoffman Fund for Experienced Engineers. Howard Miller called me when he heard the news. "Brad, you magnificent bastard," he said, laughing. "I told you to file that patent, but I never imagined it would turn into something like this. Howard, I owe you dinner. Hell, I owe you a vacation. Just promise me you'll use this wisely. Don't let success make you forget where you came from." I wouldn't. I couldn't. Every time I walked into Summit's offices, I remembered what it felt like to clean out my desk with 2 cardboard boxes while former colleagues pretended not to see me. My first week as Chief Technology Architect was everything Apex should have been. Ryan Torres introduced me to the development teams as the engineer who built the encryption system that keeps our defense contracts secure. Not as overhead to be optimized, as the guy who solved critical problems. The integration meetings were fascinating. Summit had been acquiring smaller defense contractors for 3 years, and they'd struggled with data security across their portfolio. My encryption algorithm could be adapted to work across all their platforms. "Mr. Hoffman," said Janet Kim, Summit's CTO, "during my first architecture review, we'd like your input on expanding this technology to our aerospace division. The Air Force is asking for enhanced security protocols on a $2.8 billion contract. Input, not implementation orders from someone with an MBA who'd never written a line of code. Input from someone whose expertise they actually valued." The Apex engineering team integrated smoothly. Zach Williams got promoted to senior developer within a month. The database administrator who'd been threatened with layoffs became lead architect for Summit's cloud migration. People who'd been treated like replaceable cogs became valued contributors overnight. The difference wasn't the technology. It was the culture. 2 months after the deal closed, I was working late in my new office when my assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Hoffman? There's a Simon Walsh here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." Simon. I hadn't seen him since the termination. Part of me was curious about what desperation looked like on someone who'd once held my career in his hands. "Send him in." Simon looked awful. Wrinkled shirt, tired eyes, the kind of exhaustion that comes from months of rejection. He'd aged 5 years in 3 months. "Brad," he said, standing awkwardly in my doorway. "Thank you for seeing me." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same type of chair I'd sat in during performance reviews when he'd explain why my raise was limited by budget constraints. "What can I do for you, Simon?" "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "The way we handled your termination was wrong. I was under pressure from the board to cut costs quickly, and I took the easy path instead of the right path." I waited. "I'm having trouble finding work," he continued. "The Apex situation. It's following me. Companies are asking tough questions about intellectual property management, about due diligence failures. I was wondering if maybe you could provide a reference, or if Summit might have any consulting opportunities." The irony was perfect. The man who'd fired me via email was asking me for help finding work. "Simon, I'm going to give you the same advice you gave me 4 months ago," I said calmly. "This is business, not personal. We needed to optimize our consultant structure for maximum efficiency. His face went pale. But unlike you, I continued, I'll explain my decision. You're not a good fit for our culture. We value experience and loyalty here. We believe in treating people with respect, even when we have to make difficult decisions. He sat there for a moment, then nodded slowly. I understand, he said, standing up. I deserved that. Simon, good luck with your job search. I genuinely hope you find something that's a better fit for your skills. He left without another word. I sat in my office for a while after he was gone, thinking about the path that led me here. The patent I'd almost forgotten about. Howard's advice to protect my work. Victoria's fierce negotiations. Summit's willingness to value expertise over politics. But mostly, I thought about the email that started it all. Workforce optimization. Your role. They'd been right about optimization. They'd just optimized the wrong person. The tech industry loves to talk about disruption, about moving fast and breaking things. But while they're busy chasing youth and cutting costs, they forget something critical. The foundation they're standing on was built by people who've been through the crashes, the failures, the hard lessons that come with experience. You can fire experience. You can streamline it to make spreadsheets look better. But you can't replace it. And when you realize too late that the thing you took for granted was actually holding everything together, don't be surprised when the bill comes due. They fired me at 53 to make their numbers look good. When their lawyers called about the patent, I smiled and said, "Then deal with me." Simon Walsh lost everything when he realized what experience was actually worth. I gained everything by remembering my own value. The chest pains are gone now. Turns out respect is better medicine than anything the doctors could prescribe. And every morning when I walk into Summit's offices, I remember the most important lesson the Army ever taught me. Always have an exit strategy, even when things look good. Especially then. Because here's what they never teach you in business school. The people you step on during your climb to the top are the same people who built the ladder you're standing on. And when you cut them loose to save money, don't be surprised if the whole thing comes crashing down.